My son sold my house while I was in the hospital. He did it the way storms roll in down here. Quiet at first, just a pressure change in the air, a certain ache in the bones. Then a sudden wall of rain that takes the breath out of you. He thought I would swallow it, sign whatever he put under my hand, move into some little furnished room where the coffee tastes like yesterday, and forget the life I'd lived inside these walls. He didn't yet know whose name was on the deed. I've spent most of my life walking hospital corridors, so I can tell when a voice is rehearsed. The young attending at the teaching hospital by the Ashley River took a breath, squared his shoulders, and told me pneumonia could be mean at my age, and the heart murmur they'd been watching had decided it wanted some attention. I nodded, cracked a joke about a burger I wanted when they let me go, and watched his jaw unclench with relief. Nurses take care of doctors more than folks think. They need someone to talk to who won't call their mama. The night before I was discharged, I heard a pair of housekeepers talking by my door. You learn to listen when you get old. People start talking around you like you're a television that's on but muted. Something about the weather, a shrimp boil at their cousin's, and then, did you see Zillow? That little blue house on Cypress Street's got a pending sign, the one with the yellow mailbox. I closed my eyes. The yellow mailbox was mine. I didn't call my son right away. I stared at the ceiling tile with the water stain that always looks like a kneeling woman to me, said a short prayer to the God I still believe in despite the foolishness of his children, and counted my breaths in sets of 4. Panic is like a small fire. You smother it early or you lose the whole house. I am not new to fires. When Ben finally answered, he sounded busy, breathless, the way people sound when they're trying to convince you nothing is wrong. Mama, I was just about to call you. The cardiologists say you good? They treating you right? They're doing what they do, I said. What's this I hear about a sign in my yard? He laughed. Ben's laugh has always been too big for his face. As a boy, he'd laugh that big laugh and then look around to see if everybody was looking at him. Oh, that! Mama, listen, don't freak out. It's a good thing. The market's hot. With your medical costs, Chloe and I figured we should go ahead and get you somewhere safer, closer to us. We got an offer you would not believe. Closer to you, I repeated. Yeah, you won't have to worry about raking leaves or storms or critters getting in the attic. We already toured a community in Mount Pleasant. Perfect little cottage units, on-site nurse, bus to the grocery. You'll have friends your own age, Mama. It's time. I felt the old part of me that has baked birthday cakes and mended jeans and held feverish foreheads lift its head and open its mouth. I have fought that part of me every day since Ben grew up, because if you let it speak, it says the soft thing you regret when people take advantage. It says, thank you, baby, when thank you is not what's called for. I swallowed it back. You sold my house while I was in the hospital. We didn't sell it yet, he said, hurried. It's under contract. Properties go under contract before the paperwork. I worked in a hospital for 41 years, I said. I can sign my own name and I can read what words mean. Under contract means you've promised it to somebody. With what authority? Silence through the line. A voice in the background, Chloe's, pitched low and sharp. Put her on speaker, she hissed, the way you talk to a child that wandered off in a store. You are making this bigger than it is, Millie, she said when I didn't object. Ben told you, we're thinking about your safety. The buyers are cash. We're closing quick. This is a blessing. Blessings don't require forgery, I said. I heard my own voice and realized it had changed. A little lower, like the singing you hear in a choir when the alto decides to carry the melody. We'll talk when I'm home. You should rest, Ben said, but it sounded like a warning. I am, I said. That's why I'm strong enough to say no. I hung up. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't cry. I put it face down on the rolling tray with the hospital gelatin cup and the single wrapped graham cracker and pulled the blanket up to my chin. Then I counted the corners of the room out loud like I used to when nights at the hospital were endless. 1, 2, 3, 4. We pretend we are fragile when we are tired, but if you've ever held down a writhing boy so a doctor could stitch his knee, you know what your hands can do. By the time the nurse in lavender scrubs walked me to the curb the next morning, the air by the river had that sweet rot smell that comes after a storm, when everything is damp, and the live oaks drip like they just cried in public. I put one foot in front of the other, let the volunteer ease me into the seat of a taxi, and looked straight down Cypress as we turned onto it. The sign in my yard was white, with a red strip along the top, under contract. Somebody had gotten tired of my old brass numbers, so the agent had used a cheap printed writer with 204 in black block font. I noticed small things the way a nurse does. The mulch disturbed under the camellias, footprints on the porch that weren't mine, a little smear on the front doorknob like the last person had been eating fries. Ben's key didn't work because he'd stopped carrying it. He'd stopped carrying it the day Chloe told him she didn't like the way my house smelled like pine sol and fried fatback. The smell of a life. The front door opened when I pushed it. I wasn't surprised. Doors will give way if you put your weight on them with the right kind of conviction. Chloe stood in the living room with a man I recognized from real estate signs around town, and a woman in a sweater the color of eggplant. The woman looked uncomfortable, like someone who had expected a party and found out they were walking into a family argument. The man, the agent, put on his practiced smile. "Mrs. Carter, you're back. We were just taking care of a few moving details. We set your next showing for—" "Nobody shows my house without my permission," I said, setting my purse on the entryway table. I could feel my feet in my shoes, flat and steady. If you stand the right way, people can't bowl you over. It's not just a figure of speech, it's mechanics. The agent glanced at Chloe. Chloe had the pinched look of a woman who hadn't eaten salt since college, but still wanted the ocean. "Millie," she said, sweet, "we have to be realistic. We can't maintain this place. The stairs alone. Do you remember last winter when you fell?" "I fell because I spent the night on a cot with a patient whose family didn't show," I said. "My legs go to sleep when I sit too long. When I go fast, they come right back. I've had this address 38 years. Show me the paperwork." Ben walked in then, handsome in the way photogenic men are handsome. Everything symmetrical, nothing interesting to snag the eye. His shirt was the kind that looks good under a blazer. He didn't have the blazer on because this was home, or it used to be, but you could see he had one in the car. He hugged me without touching me. "Mama, you should sit." "I will stand," I said. "Show me the paper that says you can sell what doesn't belong to you." "We have a durable power of attorney," he said. He looked at the agent. "It's all legal. Show me." Chloe went to the kitchen drawer where I kept elastic bands and pencils and paper clips, opened it like she owned it, and pulled out a manila folder. She had always moved inside my house like I'd left a door open she had every right to walk through. She set the folder on the coffee table I bought at a yard sale and flipped it open. The printed name at the top said Durable Power of Attorney. Under that, in neat letters, Principal Millicent R. Carter, Agent Benjamin A. Carter, 2 signatures at the end. My name in a scrawl that looked like somebody's try-hard imitation of how I write mine when I'm holding a grocery list in a purse strap. A notary stamp. I knew the notary. I knew her because she sat at the end of my church pew and brought pound cake to every funeral. She would have notarized anything Chloe put in front of her if Chloe had said I'd asked her to. "You don't have a medical POA in here," I said, turning the pages as slow as soup. "Just durable. Durable means money. Durable means you can pay my light bill and buy groceries when I can't. Durable does not mean you can transfer my home to a stranger for my safety while I'm coughing." I looked at the agent. "You know that." He touched his tie. The eggplant sweater woman squinted at the copy like she could tell the truth by staring. "We thought we were doing right by our mama," Ben said, smiling at the woman behind me more than at me. "You know how it is. Hard choices. But we got a great offer that'll set her up." "What did the great offer say the legal description of the property was?" I asked. He blinked. "What did the closing attorney pull from the clerk of court? The number that tells you exactly which dirt you're trying to take? Where Miss Thrift and Mr. Dunn look up who owns what they're being asked to pass between people? Or did your agent not go that far?" The agent cleared his throat. "We're set to pull the title the week of closing." "Then you haven't seen the deed," I said. And I smiled, which scared Chloe enough that she stepped back as if I'd pulled a knife out of my purse. I picked up the manila folder, slid it back into the drawer, and shut it. "Y'all go on," I said to the agent and the woman in the eggplant sweater. "There won't be any showing. You're trying to sell a house my son does not own." "What?" Ben said, half laugh, half insult. "Mama, come on." "I'm not playing with you," I said. "You don't get to call me Mama in the same breath as you put a price on my roof. Go on. I will call the clerk and see who the notary used for ink this time." The agent did a little shrug. "You practice in the mirror when you don't want to seem like you're picking a side." The woman in the sweater touched her necklace and said, "I'm so sorry," and the agent hustled her out as if she were a candle someone had put too close to the drapes. When the door closed, Ben turned that face on me, the one that says he's the adult in the room and I am holding everybody back. "Mama," he said, slower, "I know this is hard for you to accept, but you can't stay here. You can't. Chloe and I aren't going to wait for a hurricane to take the roof off and leave you under it. We did this because we love you." "You made a decision you thought would make your life easier," I said. "Love does not hide in paperwork. I am going to make some calls." "To who?" Chloe asked. "Your church? A legal aid number where they put you on hold? We have an attorney." "Sweetheart," I said, turning to her in a way that made her shift her weight, because she didn't like being called sweetheart by a woman who had bandaged more knuckles than Chloe had filed. "I was a nurse. Nurses feed doctors. I never taught y'all the recipe, but I know how they eat. I have an attorney too." "What attorney?" Ben asked, and I could hear how scared he was because he said it too fast, like he was trying to step over something. "Mr. Green," I said. "We worked nights together at county when he was a clerk. He got old and went to law school like a teenager with a pipe dream. He's been doing wills and trusts and fussing at people for signing things they shouldn't for 20 years. I put him on retainer the spring Hazel was born. Remember? The spring you didn't come to Easter because Chloe said my ham was too salty." "Mr. Green," Ben said, like I'd said the mailman. "Mama, please." "The deed," I said, "is in the name of a living trust. I am the trustee. Mr. Green is the successor trustee. The beneficiary is Hazel Carter, minor child. I prepared it when the doctor told me my murmur might get mouthy later. I filed it, paid the recording fee, and put the stamped copy next to the pictures of your father in his uniform. I changed it on purpose, for the reason we don't leave babies alone near a pool. I didn't intend to die and have you drown." I didn't raise my voice. "You don't have to raise your voice when you're giving a dosage no one can argue with." Ben sat down like someone had pulled his knees out from under him. Chloe stared at me. The realization took a second to make the trip across her face like a little town in the winter waiting for the power to come back on. "What?" she said. "You put the deed in the name of a baby? You can't do that." "You can," I said. "It has a trustee. That means nobody sells it unless the trustee says it gets sold. That's me, until I say it isn't. Then it's Mr. Green. When Hazel is grown, she can handle it herself. Not you, not Ben, not some man in a sweater with a gray beard who pays cash for cheap houses." "You never told us," Ben whispered. "You never asked," I said. They left my house like what we'd said would rub off. Ben stood staring at the spot on the floor where his father used to put his boots, then followed Chloe out without looking back. I heard his car door slam. I heard him drive too fast down Cypress, like always. The silence that fell behind them was not empty. It was full of decisions. I put water on to boil, made coffee dark enough to stand up in the cup, and sat at my kitchen table. The ring on the table where Ben's father once put his beer can had light in it from the window. It looked like a small moon. I got my red notebook from the bread box, the one where receipts go, and letters that need stamps and photographs I keep meaning to frame. I wrote today's date in the corner. I always write the date. Dates save time when memory tries to tell lies. The first call I made was to Mr. Green. He answered on the second ring, the way people do who are not waiting for bad news but have learned it could come. "Millie," he said, and I could hear the smile in his mouth. "You get out of that place?" "I did," I said, "and I came home to theater. My son tried to sell the house." "Did he now?" His paper rustled the way old paper does. "He says he has a durable power of attorney. He does. Signed by a notary whose pound cake can make you forget your own name. I want to make sure the title company knows it doesn't avail him. You know the two attorneys that handle most of the closings down there?" he asked. "Thrift and Dunn?" "I do. They're good." They won't push this through, but sometimes an eager one will try to run a deed through and hope the other side is asleep. So, we don't sleep. I'll file a letter of representation with the Register of Deeds and a copy of the trust certification, and I'll call the Real Estate Commission, because if he listed that place without the trustee's signature, his license will be getting some fresh air. You want me to be loud or quiet? Quiet, I said. I want to be quiet until it's time to be loud. He chuckled. I always liked how you think. And then, I said, I want to make sure Hazel is safe. If I fall asleep and don't get up, I don't want her to wake up in a world where her mama's mama is living out of a storage unit and her daddy is wondering if he can borrow it. We already have your will, he said. We have the trust. We have beneficiary designations on the accounts. You're tidy, Millie. I was a nurse, I said. People think nursing is about gentle voices. It's also about charting. Nobody argues with a chart that is in order. After I hung up, I called the notary. I didn't want to, but you do the hard things early in the day if you can. She answered on the 5th ring. Millie, she said, cheerful like we were at the church picnic. I saw you'd been under the weather. I've been praying. Thank you, I said. Did Chloe come by with a durable power of attorney and ask you to notarize it? She did, she said, bright. Said you'd asked her to bring it. Said your wrist was hurting and you couldn't sign at the bank. You know I don't. You notarized it without me there, I said. A pause. I thought, Chloe's so helpful. She volunteers with the kids. She said, she lied, I said, not unkind. It's a curious thing how people can do something wrong and be relieved to be told the truth if you let them come down gently from their self-justification. If someone asks you to notarize my name and I'm not in the room, you call me. If I don't answer, you do not notarize. You put down your pound cake and you go back to reading your book. We all have to be brave somehow. Oh, she said, small. I'm sorry, Millie. Lord, I'm sorry. I know, I said. Make it right by not doing it again for anyone. Not me, not your sister, not a man who says he's in a hurry and smiles like a deacon. You're holding other people's houses when you hold that stamp. I will, she said. I promise. I believed her. People believe different kinds of promises. A nurse will believe the promise you make to yourself to do better because she has watched addicts decide to live and make it. But she will also write your name down and date it. So if you get foolish again, she knows where to start. I did small things the rest of that day. I watered the rosemary in the clay pot on the steps. I folded the towel from the hospital and put it with my rags because hospitals don't miss one towel and I like a towel that's already done some work. I walked out to the mailbox and came back slow, not because my knees complain, but because I wanted to see what the street looked like now that everything had a different color. Ben did not come. Chloe texted me 3 paragraphs about love and duty and my health and how social media can be cruel. I didn't reply. My hand didn't need that memory. In my red notebook, I wrote down the names I needed to remember. The closing attorneys, the agent, the number of the man at the commission that Mr. Green liked because he had a mother. I wrote down that the olive oil was low. I wrote down that the porch light needed a new bulb. When you refuse to let a bad day deny you a good list, it gets disoriented. It doesn't know where to put its hands. The letter from Mr. Green came 2 days later. He used old man paper, heavy stock, embossed name like a monogram on a pillow. To whom it may concern, it said, clipped and sure, Millicent R. Carter is the current trustee of the Live Oak Trust, the owner of record of 204 Cypress Street. No person has authority to convey, encumber, or list said property without express, written consent of the trustee. Any attempt to do so may constitute fraud and will be referred to the appropriate authorities. It was beautiful enough to frame. He called me after he filed it. It's in the book now, he said. Anybody who tries to pull the index is going to see you before they see your son. Good, I said. You want me to call Ben, he asked, or you want to learn if he can read? Let him learn, I said. Ben learned because the closing attorney called him. I know that because he called me right after like a boy who got sent to the principal and wanted to tell his mother how unfair school is. Mama, why didn't you tell me you did that? He said. You embarrassed me in front of people. You embarrassed yourself, I said. He breathed like he might cry, and I felt that old spoon inside me stir the pot. He was my baby once. He used to hold my earlobe to fall asleep. He used to put his cold feet on my calves under the covers and laugh when I jumped and said curse words I won't repeat now, but are in the Bible, if you know where to look. He was also a man who tried to sell the house I sit in, plant my herbs in, pray in, repair in, rest in. The spoon got put away. I thought you wanted me to take care of you, he said. I thought that was what sons do. Sons stand beside, I said. Vultures perch above. Which one is it today? I'm trying to be a good husband, he snapped. Chloe worries. Chloe worries her nails are going to chip, I said. Worry is not the same as love. He hung up. I wrote hung up next to his name. I've always kept track of who hangs up and who stays on the line. Chloe, of course, didn't hang up. She came over. She came over in a white blouse and high-waisted pants and shoes that made the wood announce her in 2 beats. She brought me bone broth from a place that sells it in little brown bottles with labels that look like they were printed on a typewriter. She set it on my kitchen counter like a peace offering from a queen to someone whose land she wanted. I don't hate you, Millie, she said. I want you to be comfortable. I want Hazel to grow up seeing you on holidays so she understands where her people come from. My people, I said, come from men who got up early and women who wash their hands without complaint. I don't know what your people do. She smiled as if I had complimented her. You cannot hurt a woman who has taught herself to turn criticism into a mirror. She sat at the table and tightened the cap on the broth as if she was worried I'd pour it out like a child. You blindsided Ben, she said. That trust, that deed. You don't blindside people standing on your own porch, I said. All the sides are mine. You're not being reasonable, she said. We're offering you a community with people your age. You'd have activities, lectures, a bus. They have a bus, I said, because they want to get old people out of the way before the dinner crowd shows up. I am not inconvenient, I am alive. She leaned in. It's not safe. What you mean, I said, is it's not profitable to keep me where you can't see me. If you could make a commission on my happiness, you'd bring flowers. She laughed then, and it was the first honest sound I'd heard from her since she showed me that fake power of attorney. You're mean, she said. You pretend you're sweet, but you are mean. I am old, I said. Old women take off the costume and see who's left. Come back when your paint wears thin. You'll be surprised by who's under there. She stood, smoothed her blouse, and for a second I saw the girl inside her who had once tried to be loved without making a case for herself like a lawyer. I had a flash then of her, tired, her feet aching in a cheap apartment where the air smelled like onion and hope, before she learned expensive taste. I felt sorry for her the way you feel sorry for a mosquito you find when you turn on a lamp at night. It doesn't mean you won't swat it. It means you recognize it's trying to live. When she left, I let myself be tired. I lay on the sofa that has held me through grief and flu and the time I caught a stomach bug from a toddler with honest eyes. I closed my own and listened to the neighborhood, the sound of a leaf blower 2 streets down, the bell from the ice cream truck, dented and still able, Mr. Dorsey's old dog huffing like an old man coming upstairs, the cicadas cranked up somewhere in the live oaks like they were tuning their instruments for an evening show. My house sounded like itself. I decided nobody was going to change that while I had breath. Hazel came over after school. She barreled through the front door like joy does when it likes you, hair escaping her ponytail, cheeks pink, book bag half open like she'd left a piece of herself in her classroom and wasn't worried about it. "Grandma," she said. And then she saw the sign through the front window and stopped like a dog at the edge of a rug. "What is that?" "It's a mistake," I said. "Want to help me make it right?" She grinned. "Yes," she said. "Do we need tape?" "We need pasta," I said. "Mistakes are easier on a full stomach." As the water boiled, she sat cross-legged on the floor, took out her homework, and told me how the substitute teacher wore boots and smelled like mint, and how the boy next to her in math broke his pencil on purpose because he liked the way the little sharpener sounds. Children hand you the world in pieces. You just have to take them. I twirled spaghetti onto plates and felt the knot in my chest that had taken up residence all day loosen on one side. Hazel asked if she could put Parmesan on her own. She always asks, even when she knows the answer. Respect beats style in this house, and she knows it. When Ben called that night, his voice was smaller. "Mama, the commission called," he said. "They want to talk about my process." "That's good," I said. "You reported me," he said. "The trust did," I said. "The deed did. You reported yourself when you put your name to something that wasn't yours." "Mama," he said, "I was trying to help." "You were trying to control," I said. "You were trying to keep your wife happy and your image tidy and your path straight. You were trying to clear what you thought was an obstacle. I am not an obstacle, Benjamin." He was quiet. I could hear that he'd walked outside. The traffic rushed and then hushed in intervals. "Chloe is upset," he said, like that was a state he needed me to care about. "Chloe is 20 pounds of wanting in a 10-pound bag," I said. "She's going to be upset until she finds what she is looking for. I hope she finds it. I hope it's not somebody else's house." "She is my wife," he said softly, like a man asking for a certain sentence to land in a certain spot. I understood then what he wanted from me. He wanted an absolution I could not give. "She is," I said. "Be her husband, not my realtor." The commission scheduled a meeting. They have a room in a building that used to be a bank before banks got glassy and started to smell like hotel lobbies. The carpet's thick enough to make your feet feel like they're walking inside a secret. The man who greeted me had tired eyes and a tie his wife still picked out. He offered water in a paper cup. He offered a chair that didn't squeak. People show their character by the chairs they put in rooms where hard conversations happen. Ben was already there when I arrived, sitting next to Chloe like a boy who brought his teacher a chocolate and wanted an A for consideration. The agent sat on his other side, a different tie, same jaw. The woman in the eggplant sweater wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. Buyers disappear when sellers reveal why you should beware. A woman at the front cleared her throat and started through the "we're here to understand" speech. I had heard that tone over incubators and in rooms where a life slips away despite our cleverness. "We are here to understand" usually means we are here to record why this went wrong, so we can tell ourselves it won't again. They asked Ben to describe his process for listing 204 Cypress. He used words like as is and comps and clean contract and cash buyer. He did not use words like mother or trust or forgery or mistake. When he finished, the woman at the front tilted her head. "Mr. Carter, did you see the recorded deed before accepting the offer?" "I thought my mother owned the property," he said. "Did you see the recorded deed?" she repeated, like a nurse who needs to know when exactly your last dose was, because wanting to be known and being known are not the same thing. "No," he said. And there it was, the cough of truth. The man with the tired eyes turned to me. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "do you want to say anything?" I stood. I always stand at the right moment. It's about gravity. If you want the world to feel what you are saying, you give it weight. I raised my son in a house where dinner was served at 6 and you did not speak to your mother like she was the clerk at the DMV, I said. A little laugh moved across the room. You can't help it when somebody nails a detail. I worked nights and days and every other shift the calendar invented so we had a roof, and later, when my husband's heart stopped on a fishing dock and no amount of me putting it back together could change God's mind, I kept that roof without him. I did not complain. I stacked my pennies the way waitresses stack plates, and I put a little in an envelope every week labeled house, because I want to leave something behind that isn't a story about how we got through. I want to leave a thing. So I planned. I filed the deed of this house into a trust so it would go to my granddaughter when I go, not to my son, because sons like mine get wives like his, and wives like his. Think a house is a ladder, not a home. I am not confused. I am not senile. I am not mean. I am careful. I took a breath. I watched Ben flinch at mean. The truth is mean if it rubs a place you want to keep smooth. My son tried to sell something he didn't own because he thought my age was a permission slip. He found out at the closing table that authority and audacity are not synonyms. You could feel the room settle. The woman at the front nodded, and the man with the tired eyes wrote something down with satisfaction. They excused us then, the way they excuse people in court before they decide whether they will slap your hand or move your hand away from the cookie jar for a season. It didn't matter to me what they did. I had already decided what I would do. I had umbrellas by the door. I wasn't going to argue with rain. Outside on the sidewalk, Ben stood in his shirt sleeves. He had taken off his jacket as if he'd been weighted. He looked younger than I'd seen him look in a decade. Chloe was on the phone, speaking fast, the way people talk when they want the world to cooperate. He lifted his hands as if he meant to touch me, and then he let them fall. "Mama," he said. "No," I said, and because I love him, I said it gentle. "Not Mama." He nodded like he was swallowing something hot. "Millie," he said, like my name was a new word he needed to try out. "What did you do? How long have you had it set up?" "Since before Hazel was born," I said. "You put it in her name," he said, awe and accusation braided together. "I put it in her trust," I said. "Her education first, then her first safe place, if she needs it. If life is kind and she has enough, it becomes a place where she welcomes other people home. But nobody is selling it to pay for an Instagram. You will not use my porch as a stepping stone." He looked at the ground and his voice came low. So low I almost didn't hear it. "I didn't know you thought so little of me." "I think so much of you," I said, and my voice did something it hadn't done in days. It bent. "I think you are worth being protected from your worst self. That's the job God gave me when He gave me you. I will keep doing it until I can't. Then paper will." He nodded. He put his hands in his pockets. He walked away with his shoulders set like an apology he didn't know how to deliver. Chloe looked at me like I was a stubborn woman on a jury keeping her from getting out of here in time for lunch. Then she flounced, because flouncing is an art some women practice until it looks like they were born with it. She is a little good at everything and excellent at nothing. I am old enough to see what that becomes. Days went by. My house returned to itself the way a body does after a fever breaks, sweaty and thankful. The sign came out of the yard. It left a patch of dead grass where it had hidden the sun. I raked that patch and planted zinnias because color fixes what words can't. At night, I slept straight through, not because I wasn't worried, but because worry can't tolerate somebody who goes to bed early on purpose. Then came the phone call that felt like a door opening in a place I needed one. It was from the closing attorney who'd had the sense to call Mr. Green before he called me. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "this is Thrift. We just wanted you to know we're not proceeding. Commission's got Mr. Carter on hold and your trust is in good order. If you need help filing something to cover yourself in the meantime, say the word." "Thank you," I said. "I'm covered." "You are," he said, with a chuckle that sounded like a man whose mama could make biscuits. "You did good." I rested my hand on the kitchen counter on the spot worn shiny by years of making cornbread and wiping up spills, and let the relief move through me. It wasn't relief like when you find your wallet in the couch. It was relief like when a test comes back benign. The thing that could break you will not today. When you pull one thread, the hem loosens. Chloe's mother came by with a pie you could buy at the store and put on a plate and pass off as your own if you had the kind of eyes that didn't meet anyone else's. She told me I was selfish for keeping what I couldn't manage. She told me women like me get sentimental about wood and forget about safety. She told me her daughter works hard and deserves stability. I told her some women think stability is something you can buy and it is not, and she said a word I won't repeat. I gave the pie to Mr. Dorsey and his dog ate 2 pieces and looked at me like he had tasted better. Then the thing happened that brought my boy to me with his bones in his eyes. The commission suspended his license for 3 months pending further education. He could still show houses, but he couldn't list them, and he couldn't get paid like he had been. The agency he worked for had a conference room with eucalyptus in a vase in the corner, and they used it to ask him to consider some time to regroup. His phone stopped ringing with people who wanted one thing and started ringing with people who wanted another. Chloe's friends stopped inviting her to the rooftop places with drinks like candy. She stopped posting pictures of their perfect sink. You can tell a lot about a person by how they act when their sink isn't perfect. He came to my house at dusk. He didn't call first. He stood on the porch and looked out at the live oak across the street that has seen my boy learn to ride a bike, shave the front of his head and lie about why, roll down the window of his first car and play a song I made him turn off because the lyrics couldn't be repeated in front of Jesus. He knocked soft. I opened the door. I didn't say his name. He didn't try Mama this time. "Millie," he said, voice small like the creek we used to stand in when we went up to the park in the low country where the kids catch tiny fish in old butter tubs. "Can I sit?" He sat at my table like a repentant man does. Hands open, elbows in, eyes down, every ounce of pride he carried put carefully under the leg of a chair to stabilize it. He looked around like he was trying to memorize where everything had always been. That is one of the ways contrition looks. You start to see the furniture for what it is and not for how it might look in your feed. "I'm sorry," he said. "What for?" I asked. "Because I am not a confessor and the sacrament means nothing unless it is specific. For not asking you what you wanted," he said. "For trying to make a choice for you like you were busy and I was doing you a favor. For thinking I knew better because I had vowels after my email signature and you have old hands. For believing Chloe knows more about love than you because she says it louder." He reached in his pocket then and took out a piece of paper folded in fourths. He laid it flat in front of me. It was his agent contract. He had quit. The line where it said reason had one word: family. I felt my mouth open then, and I closed it the way you do when you smell something burning and don't want to let it in. "Don't do big things for me to prove you've changed," I said. "Do small ones for yourself and then don't tell anybody." He nodded. "I'll learn," he said. "I know you don't owe me help. I know I took. But if you have a list, I would like to do some things on it." I opened the red notebook. I tapped the page with the porch light bulb and the olive oil and the name of the commission man underlined because I meant to send him a thank you card. "Fix the screen in the back, it catches. The hinge on the bedroom door squeaks in the night. The path stones out front have settled. Folks trip. The rosemary could do with more dirt. And the back steps need staining before the summer storms make the wood go soft." He smiled small. "I can do those." "I know," I said. "That's why I asked you." He started coming on Saturdays with a bag of tools I recognized because I bought them for his father. New handles, old purpose. He worked quiet. He asked where I kept the screws. He didn't make me stand in the doorway and pretend I wasn't watching, so I stood in the doorway. When he finished a thing, he didn't call me to witness it and ask for praise. He washed his hands with the bar soap under the sink and dried them on the towel I had stitched a loop into because my husband never put his back on the rack. Then he sat on the back steps and let the late light touch his face like a benediction. After a few weeks of that, he brought Hazel with him. She wore a little tool belt he'd bought at a dollar store, with a plastic hammer and 2 real nails that made me sigh and then laugh, because part of love is letting people be ridiculous in the direction of good. He showed her how to hold the screwdriver and how to wipe wood dust off a windowsill with her sleeve if she couldn't find the cloth. And he said, "Don't tell Grandma I told you that. We clean properly in this house." And Hazel ran inside and told me, and I looked at him and he threw up his hands like a boy. I made grilled cheese sandwiches with too much butter, and he ate too. He started carrying a different phone. The case wasn't fancy. He didn't answer it every time it rang because the calls were fewer and you can forgive a lot when quiet falls on a person and they don't scramble to fill it. Chloe didn't come. When she called, her voice had an edge, like a knife put through a sharpener too many times. I tried to feel sorry for her, and sometimes I succeeded. Most times I remembered her in my kitchen saying activities with a smile like she'd invented something. The letter came from the commission at the end of the 2nd month. It said Ben could have his license back if he completed a course on ethics and paid a fine that made him swallow before he wrote the check. He came by with the letter and held it out to me like a boy with a report card. "I did the course already," he said. "It was good. It made me mad. Then it made sense." "I'm glad," I said. "What will you do now?" Not list old folks' houses, he said with a little laugh that was not big. I got offered a job with a local builder, not sales, punch lists, making sure the things people call to complain about get fixed. They said I was good with people. I think maybe I am. I think maybe I was using it wrong. I put my hand on top of his. His hand is big and warm. It has a nick on the knuckle from where he fought a boy in 8th grade for saying something about me that didn't need saying. He had come home that afternoon with his lip split and his eyes wide, and he had said, "He said you clean toilets." And I had said, "I cleaned yours when you were little, and I will clean anybody's. I am paid to, because the floor does not care who stands on it. It still needs mopping." He had laughed then, and the sound in his throat had been clean. "Use it right," I said now. "You can sell anything if you believe in it. Belief and love are not the same. Learn the difference." He nodded. He looked around my kitchen. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Why Hazel? Why did you pick her and not me?" "Because you were already gone," I thought. "Because you loved me on Sundays and loved yourself on weekdays and forgot there are 7 in every week. Because you learned the wrong lessons from a world built to confuse you. Because you are my son and I know the ways you slip. Because the day I watched you look at this house like a check I hadn't written yet, I decided to make sure it didn't bounce. Because I wanted you to look at your daughter and see the future where your face wouldn't block it," I said. "Because you needed a reason to love somebody besides yourself that wasn't me. I am sturdy, Ben. People lean on me and they should, but I won't be here when it counts for you. Hazel will." He breathed out and it sounded like prayer. "Thank you," he said. "You are mean sometimes, and you are right." I laughed. "Mean keeps weeds out of flower beds," I said. "It isn't pretty, but it is effective." The summer came on. The air got heavy the way it does right before 5 o'clock when the sun decides to sit on your chest. The zinnias took off. Mr. Dorsey found a half-dead fern on the curb and brought it to me because he said he knew I liked fixing things. I hung it on the porch and watered it with a mixture of coffee grounds and kindness, which is how you fix most things. Hazel had a birthday. We made a little cake with sprinkles that tasted like childhood. Ben invited me to the park and I surprised him by going. His father used to take him there and push him on the swing until the chain squeaked. He and Hazel sat on the grass and watched a squirrel look like it owned something it had not bought. Chloe filed for separation. She sent me the papers like I needed to know what my place was. The line where it said irreconcilable had a dot over the I, like a little heart. I have never liked hearts drawn in places they don't belong. Ben did not ask me to talk to her. He should not have. That was theirs, not mine. He moved into a small apartment near the river where he could hear the bridge hum. He bought a sofa from a place that delivers in a truck with a paint job that makes you think about clean shirts. He put a picture of Hazel on the bookshelf. He did not put one of me. That was right. We went through a hurricane that wasn't. The news talked and the wind whistled and then the world quieted like it had thought better of it. I put my important papers in a zip bag like always and set them in the oven because water's cousin is fire and you need to choose what you want to fight if you have to. I wrote down my policy numbers and the names of the cousins who answer the phone. I taped my flashlight to the leg of the bed. Ben came over and helped me move the porch furniture inside, and we sat in the doorway and ate peanut butter out of the jar, like we did when his father was alive, and we had no money, but had a kind of joy that ignores math. You know a story is working when it stops needing explanation. That's what happened then. I stopped explaining to myself why I'd done what I'd done and started living inside the result. The trust stood between me and my boy, the way a fence keeps a good neighbor from becoming a problem. He learned to knock. He learned to ask. He learned to do without announcing that he was doing. He learned to sit in a chair and not be the event. He learned to be a son instead of a brand. One morning in late September, I woke up and couldn't catch my breath. And I knew the way you know when a storm will not be talked out of its plans. I sat up slow and put my feet on the floor and felt the house like a friend under me. Hazel had a picture due that day for school about where her people come from. She had brought her markers the night before and asked if she could draw the yellow mailbox, and I had said yes. Ben had sat at the table and made a little sketch of the live oak like he used to do when he was 14, and he had been surprised that his hand remembered. The picture lay on the counter under a magnet shaped like a peach. I touched the top edge with one finger, and then I did what nurses do when it is time. I made the bed. I did not call 911. You can be mad at me for that if you want. I had sat with more people than I can count at the edges of their lives, and the ones who stayed themselves longest were the ones who chose their chair. I chose mine. The one by the back window where the rosemary sits and the morning light comes through like it has been up since dawn baking a cake. I put on my house dress that makes me feel like my mother and I braided my hair even though there is less of it now. I made coffee because coffee is how the living bless themselves. I wrote a note to Mr. Green that said, "It's time," and I left it on the counter under the peach magnet, and I put my red notebook on top of it so the magnet wouldn't let it go anywhere. Then I called Ben and told him to bring Hazel by on their way to school because I wanted a picture of her in front of the zinnias. He said they would, and he didn't ask me why, even though he's the kind of man who asks why when the sun changes its mind. They came. Hazel in her shoes she loves because they roll up at the toe a little like elf shoes. Hair in a braid I can tell her father did because it was trying its best. Ben in a shirt with paint on it from a job. He lifted his phone to frame us in front of the flowers, and I said, "Wait," and I went inside and picked up the little framed picture that sits on my dresser of his father with his arm around me at a party we weren't invited to, but went to anyway, because life is short and we wanted to dance. I stood between them and held the picture, and Hazel said, "Grandma, why are you crying?" And I said, "Because you are beautiful," which was true. And Ben took the picture, and we caught all of us in it at once. The dead, the living, the woman who will keep the house when the dead and the living are gone. "I want you to be proud of me," Ben said then. Sudden, like something he'd been containing had decided it wanted out. He looked embarrassed the way children do when they say the sentence that matters. Not just for what I fix, for how I carry myself. "I am," I said. "I am proud of the way you come and the way you go and the way you leave the wrench where I can find it. I am proud of the way you speak to your child. I am proud of your quiet. Do not make me regret it by boasting." He laughed, and Hazel said, "Daddy boasted yesterday when he fixed Mrs. Parker's sink and she gave him cobbler." And he said, "I did," and we all laughed because sometimes joy can get past anything. They left. I washed the one cup I had used. I wiped the counter. I folded the dish towel and hung it neatly where it always goes. I went back to my chair. The house breathed with me. The wall clock in the hall clicked its way toward a time I didn't need to know. A car passed slow outside, the way cars do when people live long enough on a street to be careful with their neighbors. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of leaving a mess. We turn death into a haunted house because we leave the drawers open. I closed mine. I set the papers under the magnet. I put my red notebook there, open to the last page. I picked up the pen and wrote Hazel's name. Under it, I wrote, "This stays yours until you choose to give it. And if you choose to give it the way you were given it, freely to someone who will sit in the morning and say thank you to the light." Then I wrote Ben's name, and under it I wrote, "Learn." Then I wrote my own because names have power. Then I folded the page like a letter and tucked it between the back cover and the last bit of cardboard so somebody would find it when it was time and not a minute before. When the breath got tight, I closed my eyes and thought about a boy in a bunk bed in a rented house we lived in before this one, his hand reaching down to find mine in the night because he heard thunder. I remembered saying, "I'm here," and I remembered meaning it. I still do. I will be here when the thunder comes for him if I can't be there with my hand, because I have left a house that will say it for me each time he opens the door and the air smells like what he came from. I did not get all the way to the end that morning. God has a way of letting some people practice before they perform. The breath eased, and I laughed at myself for dramatics. And then I called Mr. Green to tell him I was not dying today. He said he was glad because he had limes and needed somebody to squeeze them over fish. And I said, "Fish deserves better than my wrists now." And he said he'd bring the limeade and I could sit. We sat on the porch that night as the sun slid down behind the live oak and the air changed colors like a shirt you wash too many times. "You did it, Millie Moa," he said. "You built a fence that teaches while it protects." "It isn't a fence," I said. "It's hands. I just can't use them forever." When the end came, it came the way a kind nurse comes into a room in the evening. Soft shoes, low voice, everything tidy. It came on a Sunday morning when Hazel's hair was in two plaits and Ben had on a shirt with buttons all the way down and a tie he had tied wrong and didn't notice because his mind was on the verse the preacher would say. I was sitting in my chair under the window. The yellow mailbox outside caught the light and threw it at the street like confetti. The rosemary smelled like all the suppers I have ever served. I did not make it to service. I had made my amends already. I wrote one more letter for Ben and tucked it in the red notebook, in the pocket with the tab that says, recipes. I liked the idea that he would find my words where my food used to come from. This is what it said. "My dearest boy, I did not give you a house. I gave you a lesson. The house belongs to a girl who will teach you again and again how to be small in the right way, and big in the right way, and quiet and loud when it matters. You will not get this wrong if you look at her when you decide what to do. If you can't see her, look at the porch. Look at the light. If you can't see either, go sit by someone older than you who doesn't want anything from you and listen until they get tired of talking. Then bring them a glass of water. Do the dishes. Take out the trash. Mow the strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street because that belongs to nobody and everybody. If you ever borrow money from your future, pay it back with time given to people who can't pay you. If you ever start to say, Mama would want, stop. I do not want. I am content. Stop making me say yes to things I would not. The house has bones like mine, good, stubborn, forgiving when the weather goes wrong. Keep an eye on the roof, paint the trim before it flakes, oil the hinges, set aside money for gutters. Don't wait to fix the small things because the big ones will toughen up and wait their turn. But the small ones get petty if you ignore them. When you eat, say thank you out loud to nobody in particular. It counts. When someone wrongs you, close the door gently. When someone saves you, send them a card with your own hand. The eyes that watched you grow are gone from this house, but the house has learned the look. It will watch you anyway. Be worth watching. I am not leaving you alone. I am leaving you with a duty and a mercy. The duty is to mean what you say. The mercy is that you get to start over as many times as you put down your pride. Pride is a heavy bag. If you feel your hand getting tired, drop it. You have carried worse and lived. When the thunder comes, think of my hand on the rail. I am always with you. Your mother. Millie, I did not feel the moment when my breath left the way you feel a screen door swing shut. It was more like a room I'd been in, got tired and needed to be aired out. What matters is that I made the bed. What matters is that my house was in order. What matters is that when Ben came later, he stood on the porch and saw me through the window and did not panic. He opened the door the way he had learned to, soft, careful, like a man entering his own life. He found the red notebook. He found the letter and he read it out loud because sometimes your eyes don't believe on their own. Mr. Green closed my eyes, which is an old thing we do for people we love when they're gone. He did it with a hand that has signed and unsigned so many foolish papers for other people, and I thought if I had breath left, I would laugh again. The neighbors came and put flowers from their yards in mason jars on my table and sang off-key and told stories where I got to be mean and right and quiet and stubborn and loving and all the things I practiced being. The house rested. It breathed out. It waited for Hazel to come home from school and run her hand along the banister and say out loud to nobody in particular, "Thank you." It stayed. It will outlast storms I won't see. It will say to my son what I said to him the night he was born, in a whisper because even his first cry was loud. You are here now. I see you. Be better than you think you can be. Ben doesn't know this yet. He will learn. But houses do not make families. Families make houses. You can sell a building and keep a family and God will bless it. Or you can keep a building and lose a family and God will weep. I chose a different door. I chose a house that tells the truth. My son sold my house while I was in the hospital, or thought he did. But what he really did was put himself in a place where the truth could find him. He learned whose name was on the deed. It wasn't his, it wasn't mine. It was written in a future he couldn't see yet. That is how you save people, by putting their names in the place where their eyes will go when they are out of breath. I have said what I had to say. The rest is in the hands I raised and the roof I patched and the porch I sat on when the sun went down. If Millie Carter is anything, she is a house with a door that closes proper and opens easy when you knock. Knock, wait, come in. And if you sell, make sure you know who it belongs to. You don't own what owns you. You only borrow it until someone with smaller hands needs to learn how to hold it. If you were here now, I would make you coffee and cut you a slice of cake and send you home with something you did not have when you came. A lesson, a sweetness, a receipt. I am old, but I am not cheap. Put this in your pocket. When you feel tempted to take what isn't yours, hold it. When you want to say mama like a spell, remember spells only work if you believe in them. Believe in work instead. This little blue house on Cypress has a yellow mailbox and a rosemary bush that needs pruning in September, and a porch light that hums when it gets tired and stairs that creak, not because they are weak, but because they want you to know they're doing their job. It has my laughter in the vents and my prayers in the paint and my quiet in the floorboards. It has a deed with a name on it that will go out into a world I hope will be kinder to her than it was to me. And if it isn't, I hope she remembers that when a woman makes a list in a red notebook and tells the truth without screaming, she can hold off anything long enough to make soup and settle her mind. It was never about the house. It was about the hands holding it. You can find me there if you listen.